making the trip in, as he normally does. We have Brian Doyle joining us from Doyle Salewski. Great to have you here once again.
Good morning.
And oftentimes we're talking about debt and how people are coping and what they're doing. And a lot of the times you get people in your office and they're terrified. They don't want to lose the house. They don't want to lose the car. And there are ways for them to be able to keep some of the things that are incredibly important to them while going through kind of this debt management.
That's why we emphasize a proposal, which is really an arrangement with the creditors, which you only need 50% of your creditors to agree upon to bind everybody. But the joy is you get to keep all your stuff, whatever you want to keep. I mean, you don't have to lose anything in the process. Many people are worried they're going to lose their houses, their cars, their motorcycles, or even their tent trailers. And they don't have to do that. As long as we come down to an affordable payment, we can stretch it out up to 60 months, no interest, pay the payment, and it's what you can afford, not what you can owe.
Okay, that was my big question. And when you look at the big picture of what's owing, it can be terrifying for a lot of people. And yet you come up with a number as to what they're able to actually, what's realistically what they can pay month to month.
It's got to be a comfortable amount they can afford to pay over a period of time, so that they can reach that goal. And of course, we want them to succeed. And at the end of it, all of the debt is forgiven, not just what they've paid.
Now, my question to you is, and you mentioned it right off the top of the interview, whereas 50% have to be agreed upon. So how is it that you get 50% of those that are waiting for collection to agree to be able to come in on this?
Well, that's the joy in being a licensed trustee, in that if we get 50% of the creditors to agree, they're all bound by the agreement. They have no choice. So this is 50% of the unsecured debt, all the credit cards and hydro payments, or anything else that might be in that mix. All you have to do is get 50% to agree, and they're all bound, so they're all brought into it. They must participate.
And this is something that likely an individual can't do on their own, to be able to call up the creditors and say, well, I've got 3 of you on board, I need another 2 of you to come on board. So this is something that you're able to do just in terms of the relationships and with the businesses that you have.
Yeah, and that's one of the failings of some of these credit counseling agencies that say we can save you 70% on your credit cards. Usually they'll go out and be able to negotiate with one, but then there'll be another 2 or 3 that'll still be on the search for all of their money, and they'll execute judgments, and eventually whatever that restructuring is will fail.
Can I ask you, at what point do you start to say to an individual that you may need to lose a couple of the extra additional toys that maybe shouldn't have been purchased in the first place? Does that ever come to the table?
It does, and then we've looked at trailers and we've looked at ATVs and said, well, really, look at your budget. You've got a family, you've got kids, you're smoking. So there are choices to be made, and they're hard ones many times. And it's up to the individual to make the choice. It's not up to me. We can only recommend.
You can recommend, but I think the times that they're making the call and they're coming into the office, they've got to realize that some changes are necessary.
But it's tough. I mean, when you've had a certain lifestyle for so long, it is tough to make the cuts, and it's tough to bring the family members into it, and they've got to make some sacrifices too.
It's not just the head of the household; it will trickle down through the rest.
That's right.
So the best thing to do at this point is to be able to get to an organization that you can cut it down in terms of getting all the collectors together. But are you able to do it over a certain amount of time? Are they able to do it in a shorter span of time if they're thinking, listen, I have a payment or I have a job or something that's coming in that we can do this a little bit quicker?
We've had customers who've been able to take loans from relatives to make one payment, and we've been able to wipe off all of their debt, even though it's not 100% of what's owing. And
because you've had everyone come together on an agreement.
Everyone came together and agreed that was the best solution. And sometimes there are compassionate grounds to bring everybody together to a solution. A family might be beset by medical problems of one of the family members, might be a child who's sick, and the extra medical costs, support costs are really crippling the family. And the creditors sometimes can be very compassionate, even Canada Revenue Agency. There's
some compassion amongst people, especially when you're in situations. I mean, you talk about that in medical, situations and children. I mean, I've heard some of these stories. It's heartbreaking to hear what happens with so many people. But at least there's information and there are solutions. The doylegroup.ca, doylesalewski.ca. There are 2 different websites. Which one do you prefer people using?
doylesalewski.ca.
doylesalewski.ca is the one you want to be able to check out. And at least when you have people like you on board, kind of makes the solution kind of. You see the end. There's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, we've got the answers, and people can come in and discuss it. It's free, and get their alternatives as to what their best solutions which lie ahead.
Always appreciate the information. Thank you.